On the first day of school, I managed to make the school bully cry, but no one knows. I'm really wronged. I just told him that his family was bankrupt. His dad ran away. His mother remarried. He was orphaned. Fabian Sandy cried so loudly that people passing by looked sideways. I took him home and wanted to take him in for a while. He looked at my family's 3 splendid brick houses and sighed. Isn't this my home? I shook my head in disapproval. Because your dad is my dad, who went bankrupt. So now this is my home. He was stunned by my shamelessness. Where's my mother? As soon as he finished speaking, he saw his mother take my dad's hand and walk in. Suddenly, his world collapsed. Before they could speak, Fabian Sandy spurted out a mouthful of blood, fainted on the spot. Me, my dad, his father hiding in the shadows. Yes, it's acting. Mr. Sandy is the richest man in 10 miles and 8 towns. Just such a son. But Fabian Sandy is a school bully who doesn't know how to learn. In order to allow his son to study hard and inherit his food base in the future, he had to pretend to be bankrupt in order to inspire Fabian Sandy's deep spirit of not admitting defeat, so that he could be angry and strive to study hard and improve every day. Finally, take back everything that belongs to him from the hands of the wicked, that is, my family. But it is clear that his psychological quality is too poor. We failed. When Fabian Sandy woke up, it was just me. So when he asked, in horror, "Who are you? Who am I? Where am I?" When I was blinded, I checked with him for a while before I concluded that he had amnesia. If the adults are not around, my bare child must not be able to stop. I glanced at the novel I had just read, and told him with an evil face that this was a world of women. Here, men have a very low status. At home from the mother, married from the wife, wife from the dead. Men have to be obedient, not to talk back, and to endure their wives' cynicism and all kinds of provocations at all times. In short, men are appendages to women. I met Fabian Sandy's stunned expression, remembered what his father expected of him, took his hand, and continued to coax. But you're a strong man. You have always studied hard and worked hard, just to let everyone know that men can also hold up half the sky. Fabian Sandy asked incredulously. Me. Yes, that's you. I was beaten like chicken blood, and I raised my voice. Do you want to make your father and husband expensive? Fabian Sandy, answer me. Do you want to? Fabian Sandy muttered quietly. Yes. Do you want to prove that you are a role model for the men of the village? Fabian Sandy, yes. Do you want to shine and let all the women fall for you? Answer me. Do you want to? Fabian Sandy was scrappy. Yes, very good. I did this set of 5-year college entrance examination and 3-year simulation. Fabian Sandy, I cheered up, intending to leave him to digest it by himself, but he grabbed the corner of his clothes. Fabian Sandy's eyes were moist as if they were soaked in water, and her face was flushed. He asked tentatively, is there a reward for that done? Fabian Sandy was originally white and clean, and she was born extremely beautiful. Now that I'm well behaved, it makes my heart soften. I asked, what reward? He chuckled with crooked eyebrows. Keep it for now, and I'll tell you later. HMPH, you really think too highly of yourself. Looking at the paper that barely got a question right, I finally understood why he said done instead of, got it right. As his good friend and top student, I automatically sat down to give him a lecture, but I said a lot, and I didn't get a response. As soon as I looked up, I realized that Fabian Sandy had been looking at me. I asked, don't understand. He shook his head shyly, his eyes full of well-behaved and cautious. You're next to you. I can't listen. What should I do? Fabian Sandy lowered her head and clasped the pen in her hand before whispering, can I ask you a question? You ask. What kind of man do you want to marry in the future? Me. Did he get into character too quickly? This adapts to the setting of the female honor. I could hear the shyness in his tone, remembering Mr. Sandy's words. I want to marry someone who studies well. Fabian Sandy. In view of the fact that Fabian Sandy was successfully brainwashed by me, Mr. Sandy gave me a more important task to help his son get into college. I questioned, but it's only 4 months before the college entrance examination. Mr. Sandy, I'll give you $50,000. Me, deal. Sure enough, He is the richest man. And he is generous. Fabian Sandy took a few days off, and went to school with me. The shy look he had after me surprised everyone. His former little brothers shouted, "The house is collapsing." But I have to say that even if some people have amnesia, the domineering gene in their bones cannot be changed. Fabian Sandy was upset to know that she wasn't in the same class as me. His father donated 10 tons of coal to the school that day, insisted on stringing him as a science student to the liberal arts class. But Fabian Sandy was still not happy because she was not at the same table as me. His dad added money. Fabian Sandy, who was sitting with me, came to me for help. "How do you feel that my dad isn't the kind of man you say? This kind of domineering man. Why did my mother marry him?" Me. The heavy academics of my senior year of high school, coupled with tutoring Fabian Sandy, have caused me to be physically and mentally exhausted recently. Mandel is also a top student at the front desk, and he loves to discuss topics with me during class. He asked me today, "Ruby Alarander, why do you have so many dark circles under your eyes? Isn't it good to rest?" After saying that, he handed me a steam eye patch. "This will relieve you." I was about to refuse, when a voice interjected from beside me, "Tut tut, it's shameless. You're a boy. Why are you embarrassed to give girls things in public?" Shameless. Mandel. Fabian Sandy glared at Mandel with disdain. When he turned his head to look at me, it turned into distress and self-blame again. "It's all my fault. I have to pester Ruby Alarander every night. I know that Ruby Alarander is tired, and I won't let you rest. It's me who is bad. Don't be angry with me. Class, you can make it clear. We're talking about it at night." Fabian Sandy reached out and put his thumb over the tail of my eye, as if he couldn't hear the gasps of others or feel the tentative gaze around him. "I don't want his stuff. I'll boil you 2 eggs at night." Really, unpretentious. Fabian Sandy was furious. He had a gloomy face all afternoon, and he didn't wait for me after school. I don't know why, but I thought I'd wait until I finished eating and did my homework together. But before the meal, he broke out. He came to me angrily. "Why did you jump rope with those boys during gym class?" His thin lips pursed high. They all bared their big teeth and smiled so happily. "They just wanted to seduce you. It's not good." I was speechless. But for the sake of $50,000, I am willing to explain. "Me, listen to me." Fabian Sandy covered her ears. "I don't listen. I don't listen." Me. Fabian Sandy, say. "You say." Me. "It's not." Fabian Sandy shook her head. "I don't listen. I don't listen." Me. I couldn't take it anymore, and shoved him against the wall. Fabian Sandy is 1.85 meters. I'm less than 1.6 meters on tiptoe. This wall knock is really very reluctant. He looked down at me with panicked eyes, then slowly bit his lower lip. His face flushed. He asked softly, "What are you going to do?" Me. "Listen to me. We're classmates, and it's normal to play together. If you don't like it, I won't play with them." His eyes flashed with joy. "Really? Let's get the 50,000 first." Fabian Sandy was just 1 second and angry the next. The reason was that he asked me aggrievedly, "Isn't it ugly that I just got angry? Will you dislike me?" I immediately shook my head. "Don't dislike it. Don't dislike it." Fabian Sandy glared. "You really think I'm ugly? Only outrageous." Me. "Eat fish at night." Fabian Sandy wondered why I had suddenly said this without a word. "Why?" Me. "Because I think you're pretty picky." I finished with a blank face, and turned around to go out. Fabian Sandy behind me suddenly grabbed my hand, and lowered her head and whispered, "Are you angry?" He rubbed his head against me, his chin resting on top of my head. "I know you women don't like vexatious boys, but I just don't like those goblins pestering you. I'll study hard. You wait for me." His words made me digest for a while, until he turned to me, coquettishly, and repeated again with a smile on his face, "You wait for me." "Okay." I just reacted a little and exclaimed, "Fabian Sandy, don't you like it?" My mouth was covered, and he stared at him with round eyes, cute and delicate like a fawn. He said angrily, "Don't say it. You haven't taken the college entrance examination yet. Don't try to take advantage of me, stinky rascal." Looking at his brisk back, I was messy and roaring inside. What did I do? Why am I a hooligan? Fabian Sandis' hard work makes Mr. Sandy very happy, and I took the opportunity to bargain with him, and successfully increase my remuneration from 50,000 to 60,000. It makes me even more motivated. In addition to sleeping, bathing, and going to the toilet, I pestered Fabian Sandy every day to do problems, and the two of us are inseparable. And there are also scandals. Another Monday, I was blocked at the door of the women's restroom by a male classmate. I looked from the bottom up. A red board is very eye-catching. I know that he is Quincy, who once fought with Fabian Sandy for school supremacy, and finally lost miserably. Seeing that he was not easy to mess with, I cautiously turned sideways, got out of the way, and said very sincerely, "Didn't you just eat enough? Go in and eat again." I pointed to the toothpick in his mouth. Quincy was stunned for a moment, then glared at me in annoyance. I shrunk my neck in fear, and when I didn't know how to leave, a hand suddenly appeared next to me. Fabian Sandy dragged me behind him, and kept me in the way. Unlike when he spoke to me, I heard his dark, low voice. He said to Quincy, "What are you going to do?" Quincy scoffed. "You, what a real person, defend her like this." Fabian Sandy paused and replied in a deep voice, "No, don't talk nonsense. Quincy, classmate, he's playing with your feelings." Fabian Sandy, "She's not chasing me yet." Two voices spoke at the same time. The next second, "Quincy, what kind of innocent little milk dog are you pretending?" Fabian Sandy frowned and blurted out, "If you can't speak, shut up, and don't get in the way of Lao Tzu." As soon as he finished speaking, we were both stunned. I watched as he turned around, and looked like he was about to cry. I asked him, "Do you remember?" He said aggrievedly, "I didn't mean to swear. I know you girls don't like dirty boys, but I don't know why I said it all of a sudden." Fabian Sandy shook my arm and whispered with red eyes, "Don't hate me." I wanted to comfort him, but I was a little embarrassed to cross his shoulder and meet Quincy's eating expression. Fabian Sandy sensed my gaze, glanced back, turned around in disgust, and said, "Don't look at him. What good boy would dress up like that? We're going to stay away from him, and we're going to be bad. I don't know how he can get into the school like this." I pondered for a moment in Fabian Sandy's sincere eyes, but I couldn't help but tell him three cruel truths. First, he used to be more exaggerated than Quincy. Second, he's very contrived right now. Third, Quincy was escorted to Harvard. Fabian Sandy, this is the worst hack at Harvard. Quincy, I didn't mess with any of you. No one knows what Quincy was doing on her way back to school. Anyway, it hurt when I left, because he said cruelly, "Fabian Sandy, if you have the ability, you can also be admitted to Harvard. Let's fight for school dominance again." Fabian Sandy looked at me. "Do you like school bullies?" I shook my head. Fabian Sandy, "Ruby Allarander doesn't like it, so I won't do it." Quincy, "You're not done, are you?" But that being said, Fabian Sandy did try harder, counterattack all the way. In a way, his ranking rushed into the middle of the school. Second, his ranking has been in the middle of the upper reaches. Sanmo, his ranking has entered the upper reaches. In the face of the college entrance examination, he is full of confidence. But unfortunately, this year's mathematics deserves to be recorded in history. After the college entrance examination, I went to Fabian Sandy's house to find him, watching him sit in the yard with his head drooped, like a big injured dog. I sat next to him, and he leaned over and rested his head on my shoulder. He asked in a low tone, "Did you do well in the exam?" Me, "Okay." Fabian Sandy, "What if I can't share the same city with you? Will you miss me?" The sadness in his tone made my heart tighten. I didn't think about it. I didn't dare to think about it. Every day I look at his handsome face, my heart is full of crazy roars. Ruby Allarander, he's amnesiac. You can't take advantage of it. He's soft and cute, but you can't reach out. He's such a milky person. I want to take a bite of Mua. No, hold back. But today the college entrance examination is over, and we are also 18 years old. He suddenly asked me something that was misleading. I suddenly couldn't help it. The young hormones are agitated. I lifted his big head and held his handsome face in both hands, pouted, little by little, approaching him. Fabian Sandy's eyes, which were still slightly red, widened at this time. His slender fingers gripped my wrist. His lips were pursed, and when he swallowed, his Adam's apple rolled with him. As we got closer, he began to redden from the bare skin of his neckline, spreading rapidly upwards, collarbones, jaws, and ears. I breathed softer and lighter until the tips of our noses touched. Suddenly, a voice came from the top of my head. "What are you two doing?" "It's Mr. Sandy." Fabian Sandy looked at Mr. Sandy between the two of us, and was so angry that he died. But Mr. Sandy didn't realize it, and took out an envelope and handed it to me. "Ruby Alarander, here's the money for you. Although the results haven't come out, Uncle believes in you." When he finished speaking, he gave me the envelope, then pat my ass and walk away, leaving me to face the storm of Fabian Sandy. "Fabian Sandy, what kind of money is this?" "Me, makeup fees." He took a deep breath, clearly restraining his temper. "You gave me a makeup lesson for money." I nodded honestly. Fabian Sandy was so angry that she got up and left. I hurriedly packed up the money and ran over to stop him. "You listen to me." "No, it's an explanation." He frowned at me for a moment, then walked around me and walked away, looking at his angry and lonely back. I felt bad, but I don't know if I'm too deep into the play, and I actually think, how can I apologize as a woman? What a shame. I craned my neck behind him and shouted, "Let's go. If you leave, don't come back." I took the money I was going to buy you a gift, and went out and squandered it. My words succeeded in stopping Fabian Sandy. He turned to look at me, his eyes flushed, and asked, "The money to buy me for a gift?" I nodded vigorously. "Yes. Why don't I make money as a woman? I'm not thinking about buying you a present, thinking about you boys. Don't you just like little surprises?" Fabian Sandy's face was a little less gloomy. "What surprise?" I pretended to be mysterious. "It's not a surprise to say it." He turned back to me, and reached out and took the envelope out of my pocket. Then, unjustifiably but confidently, he said, "I'll keep this money here, and I'll keep it for you. Don't mess up with those useless surprises." What a waste. You women just don't know how to live. I looked at the 10,000 yuan that came out of Sandy's house, and returned to Sandy's house after 4 months of hard work, and I cried so loudly. This father and son play with me. Because of the loss of the small coffers, I didn't leave the house much for several days, until the results of the college entrance examination come out. I, number 1 in the city. He, don't mention it. Neither of us was happy. I'm because of the money. He was out of town with me, but our sadness didn't infect anyone else. For example, Mr. Sandy, in order to celebrate his son's admission to the second book, he, as the richest man in the town, held a banquet very extravagantly. In the evening he drank too much, and said with a big tongue that there was green smoke on his ancestors. Finally came out a college student. Even the TV reporter, who came to interview me, was stopped by him, trying to tell people about Fabian Sandy's past. The whole process is just 2 words: counterattack. The two of us, who were already sad, were even more sad. It's just that I'm stealing the limelight. Fabian Sandy is because it's too humiliating. At the end of a noisy day, the summer night is a peaceful song of cicadas. We sat down in the courtyard again. He rested his head on my shoulder again, and asked me the same question. "If you can't go to college in one city, will you miss me?" "Will I wonder if I don't know. But you've got it all said, and I have to show it a little." I lifted his head and held his cheek, pouted, and kissed it. "But I really don't have any experience, so I just mua for a while, and I'm going to separate." Suddenly an extra hand on my waist pushed me towards him. The other hand clasped the back of my head, and deepened the kiss. When they are separated from each other, no one dares to look at anyone. After a while, he whispered, Are you going to get pregnant?" "Me? What are you looking at behind my back? It's outrageous. My relationship with Fabian Sandy is settled. I received a letter from Harvard, and he applied to a university near me. We've been together all summer. It wasn't until the night before parting that Quincy sent me a message out of the blue. He asked me to meet at the gate of the high school, and had something to say to me. I almost didn't hesitate to go to Fabian Sandy's house to find him, and try to take him with me, because the parents knew about us. Mr. Sandy opened the door in the middle of the night and saw that it was me. and he didn't show the slightest surprise. I pushed open Fabian Sandys' bedroom door unhindered and shouted, "Fabian Sandy, come out with me." I was going to stand at the door and call him out the door, but the moment he opened the door, he saw him put his hands behind his back in a panic. I looked at him quizzically. His heart was so weak that his eyes were erratic. "What are you hiding?" Fabian Sandy glanced at me cautiously, then bit her lower lip. Seeing how he looked like he had done something wrong, I suddenly had an epiphany. I've forgotten what I'm here for. I just want to get away from the scene that made me toe on the ground. I had barely taken a step when Fabian Sandy, who was sitting on the bed, quickly got up. He dragged me into his room, closed the door, and blocked me between him and the door. "You're angry?" he asked tentatively. I stared down at the ground and shook my head. "No, it's normal for a boy your age to be curious, but you have to look at it in moderation. After all, it's not good for physical and mental development." Fabian Sandy nodded. "Ruby Ilarander, it's great that you can understand me. I knew I shouldn't be looking, but I'm so curious." I was going to take a look, but I didn't expect it to look so good. Hooked me all at once. I looked up at Fabian Sandy in disbelief. It's really hard to imagine that he has such a handsome face, and he can't stop looking at it. "That kind of reading, still relishing. Still talk to me about how you feel after reading." I bowed my head a little and wanted to go home and calm down. Before I could say anything, Fabian Sandy said, "I'll give it back to you when I'm done." I looked at him in amazement. "Give it back to me?" "Well," he smiled shyly, "I didn't say I was going to take a book home and read it that day. I didn't expect Ruby Ilarander to like books like this." I leaned forward against him and took the book he had hidden behind him. "The Domineering Bamboo Horse Spoils Me." This, in the world of women, this is indeed a forbidden book that is against the law. I choked speechlessly, and felt sorry for Fabian Sandy. Amnesia. Deceived again. I sighed reproachfully, and shoved the book into his arms. "If you like, I'll get it for you tomorrow." He was pleasantly surprised and asked, "You're not angry?" I raised my hand and waved. "Don't be angry, don't be angry. I love to watch too." As soon as I finished speaking, Fabian Sandy suddenly grabbed the doorknob. He opened it lightly, and I, who had been leaning against the door, threw myself forward. He reached out and took me in his arms. Fabian Sandy's chin rested on my head, and the sound of her heartbeat landed right in my ears. The voice of his mouth is no longer coquettish and sweet. Instead, it became the former low and indifferent, like this. His palm ran up my back, and finally, he lifted my chin, forcing me to look at him. Deep eyes, with a bit of meaning. Before kissing me on the lips, he said, "You are good. I will go to you on vacation." I was intoxicated by Fabian Sandy's domineering gentleness. It always feels like I've forgotten something. If it weren't for Fabian Sandy's later return to his well-behaved milk dog appearance, I would have thought he was faking amnesia. In the blink of an eye, military training, college life is novel, busy, and fulfilling. Fabian Sandy and I would video every night, and I couldn't get enough of it. After a month of peace, I was dragged by my roommate to a welcome party. Then, I met Quincy, the big wrongdoer. His hair was dyed black, clean jeans and white short sleeves, looking like a dog, attracted the side eyes of many female students. But I still remember the way he looked when he blocked me at the toilet door. I curled up in the corner, moving out little by little, trying not to attract anyone's attention. After reaching the door, he rushed away. It's just that before I ran 10 meters, I was choked by the back of fate. Quincy spoke grimly behind me. "Do you know how venomous the mosquitoes were that night?" I wept and replied, "If I say I didn't mean it, would you believe it?" I couldn't help myself in the gentle countryside woven by Fabian Sandy, and I forgot about Quincy asking me out of the high school gate. He approached me like a pervert, his disgusting breath in my ear. He also said in what he thought was seductive, "Then you have to make it up to me." Then a hand slowly reached in front of me and stopped on my chest. My eyes didn't dare to look down, and my whole body stiffened. The fear in my heart made my eyes moisten. Just as I was about to cry, the vibration of my phone in my chest pocket brought me back to my senses. It's Fabian Sandy. Courage suddenly rose in my heart. Even if he's not with me, even yet, I haven't seen him yet. I struggled to break free of Quincy's restraints, and before he could speak, the hand holding the phone threw it back desperately. I felt like I had hit something in the corner of my phone. Before he could react, Quincy's wail came from behind him. I just want you to send a red envelope. You're going to kill me. Knowing I was in trouble, I picked up Fabian Sandy's video in a panic, and focused the camera on Quincy rolling all over the floor. But the night was too dark to see clearly. Fabian Sandy asked, confused, "What are you doing over there?" I leaned into my phone and whispered, "It's Quincy." "Who?" He raised his voice all of a sudden, and a condensed look appeared on his face. "Did you meet him? Did he bully you?" That tone, that voice, was exactly the same as when he used to be a school bully. Makes me a little trance-like. Ruby Ilarander. Ruby Ilarander. Fabian Sandy's call brought me back to my senses. I just hit him. There. It's not going to be scrapped, is it? I asked scaredly. Fabian Sandy frowned and thought seriously. It's hard to say. Quincy, get out. I'm fine. Later. I couldn't sleep in the middle of the night. I can't figure out why Quincy appears every time. Do you do wrongdoing? Fabian Sandy and I never met each other because of the lack of easy schoolwork. Until the night before 11, he came to me. I excitedly ran to the school gate, and heard someone talking on the way. That boy at the door is so handsome. It's my dish, but it's just too indifferent. And I refused to ask him for Weshit without even looking at it. I vaguely guessed who they were talking about, and the next moment I saw him blocked by the girl to ask for contact information. The shoulders are broad, the waist is thin, and the legs are long, but the eyebrows are full of impatience. Fabian Sandy, I shouted, drawing the eyes of the people around me. He looked up, his eyebrows stretched instantly. He smiled and beckoned to me, and just two people. Soon, however, he regained his seriousness as if he remembered something. I approached in surprise and asked, "What's wrong?" He looked at me with a somewhat obscure look in his eyes, and then suddenly reached out and pulled me into his arms. At the crowded school gate, he bowed his head directly to kiss me. I covered his mouth in panic. "What are you doing?" He sneered. "Woman, don't try to get away with it. Come, kiss me, kiss a fart." I struggled to break free of him. He stared at the big innocent eyes. "Didn't you give me so many Overlord novels?" I watched it carefully. "That's how they are." Me. I dragged him to eat near the school, and visited the nearby night market. It's 10 o'clock in the blink of an eye, and it's time to go to bed. The two of us stood on the side of the road, a little worried. In the end, he spoke. "Why don't you take me back to the hotel?" "I'm afraid." I looked at his height of 185 and nodded silently. "Well, for good reason. There are many coincidences in the world. For example, why did I bring my ID card? Why did it fall to the ground when I took out my phone?" He was picked up by Fabian Sandy, and put it in his pocket. Then, I sat down on the hotel bed, listened to the sound of running water in the bathroom. The heartbeat exploded the moment Fabian Sandy came out. I fluffed to my feet and looked at him awkwardly, overwhelmed. Fortunately, instead of learning the boss in the novel, he wrapped a bath towel, and came out directly like an exhibitionist, but dried himself and came out wearing half-sleeve shorts. To ease the awkwardness, I said, now that it's safe, I'll go back. I walked out and was blocked by Fabian Sandy. His face was dark, and his eyes were full of grievances. "Don't you love me anymore? You've changed your mind here." "I'm tired of getting it before I get it." I shook my head in a panic. "No, I'm afraid for a while I can't hold it." Hearing this, Fabian Sandy was stunned for a moment, and then a flush crept up her cheeks. He muttered, "Also, you don't have to control it too much." Heh. He pursed his lips and smiled, glancing at me shyly. "You women are a virtuous person, and you don't think about it properly all the time. Stinky rascal." The temperature in the room rose with his eyes. I got a little hot, swallowed, and asked, "Can I hold you?" He held out a finger to my mouth. "Don't ask. Go." I pounced unceremoniously. Bang. It was so hard that the back of Fabian Sandy's head hit the door frame. Fainted. 120 when I came. My mind was broken. I can think of the hot topics in the same city tomorrow. The young man in the flower season was played to a coma. Is it a moral degradation or a distortion of human nature? The mysterious men and women hotel opened. But why did 120 break in? Young boys and girls are in the same room. Why are there screams in the house late at night? When everything was settled, I shut the eyes of those gossips out of the ward. It's 1 o'clock in the morning, but what I really worry about in my heart is not tomorrow's topic, not the eyes of others. Rather, I'm afraid that Fabian Sandy will wake up, because according to the routine of ancient romance, there are 3 possibilities for him to wake up this time. 1. He regained his memory, but forgot about the time when he lost his memory. He scoffed at our feelings and hurt me deeply. Grief-stricken, I turned away. He came to his senses, and then chased his wife to the crematorium. The ending, depending on my mood. 2nd, he regained his memory, and he did not forget the time when he lost his memory. But I'm angry at my deception, and I'm ashamed of those coquettish and cute people in the past. He broke off with me with cruel words, and turned his head to find a girl ambiguously. Grief-stricken, I turned away. He came to his senses, and then chased his wife to the crematorium. The ending, depending on my mood. 3. Fabian Sandy did not have amnesia at all from beginning to end. He just blamed us for lying to him, so he pretended to have amnesia, playing with us in the palm of our hands. When the day came when the truth was revealed, I was heartbroken. I turned away. He came to his senses, and then chased his wife to the crematorium. The ending, depending on my mood. Anyway, no matter what, you have to chase your wife to the crematorium. But I never expected it to be the 4th. He's amnesia again. Fabian Sandy opened her eyes and asked in horror, "Who are you? Who am I? Where is this? Me, I'm your mother. I was wrong. If I am guilty, please let the law punish me." Instead of being held in the arms of a boy under the gaze of all the medical staff, he was called Mom vigorously. I said, "I'm not your mother." Various examinations found no problems, and the doctor left. His parents won't be here until tomorrow. So I realized that raising a child is not easy. "Mom, I'm thirsty. Mom, I'm hot. Mom, I'm hungry. Mom." At the end of the day, I was exhausted. The phone rang and rescued me. "It's Quincy." Me, "Hey, Quincy, what's the matter? Quincy, didn't you tell me to call you?" I raised my voice and replied, "Hey, do you miss me? Quincy, you're sick." Me, "You're going on a date with me." I glanced at Fabian Sandy. "No, I'll watch cartoons with my son." Quincy, "You all have sons, do you?" Fabian Sandy, me, "You're going to be a stepfather." Quincy, "Get out, neurotic." Me, "You're going to buy him Ultraman." Oh, Quincy, don't break the bank. Quincy, me, "Do you love me?" I rubbed my feet shyly. Oh, the baby is still there. Don't. Hey. I looked up at Fabian Sandy, who came by at some point, snatched my phone with a blank face, and said coldly to Quincy, "You deserve it too." Quincy, "I didn't mess with any of you." Fabian Sandy and I stared at each other for a moment, then spoke. Me, "You lied to me." Fabian Sandy, "You've got someone." I tried to reason with him, and told him that he had lied to me first, so I tested him. But a boy in the world of female dignity can't listen to any reason. He turned his back to me as if he had been greatly wronged. Ignoring people, I sighed and decided to play the emotional card. I quietly put a sad BGM. With the emotions in place, I slowly spoke. "Fabian Sandy, I've actually liked you for a long time. When I was in junior high school, we were at the same table, and you brought me breakfast every day. I'm on duty, and you'll wait for me to come home with me. There are male classmates bullying me, and you will always be the first to rush out to protect me. You are my white moonlight." But I didn't dare confess to you until you lost your memory. When I give you makeup lessons every day, I am so far away from you. I am afraid that the sound of my heartbeat will be heard by you. I don't dare to expect too much, because I'm afraid that your liking for me is just dependence. I'm tormented every day now. I'm afraid you won't like me if you remember. I'm afraid you won't remember. It's too unfair to you. By the end, my voice choked and my eyes moistened. Fabian Sandy turned to look at me, and reached out to wipe the tears from my eyes. A kiss on the corner of my lips, saying sensual love words. "Fool, I love you forever." I burst into tears and laughed. "Do you remember when we were at the same table in junior high school?" He frowned and said, "We didn't share the same table when we were in junior high school. I remember back then, you sat in the second row, And who was? His voice stopped abruptly. The entire ward was eerily silent. I watched Fabian Sandy silently, a wild roar in my head. Fabian Sandy licked her lips and spoke cautiously. You listen to me? Me, I don't listen. I don't listen. Fabian Sandy, me, explain. Explain. Fabian Sandy, I didn't mean to. Me, I don't listen. I don't listen. Fabian Sandy. He grabbed my wrist, pulled me to him, and shut me up. Wait for me to calm down before parting and explaining to me. I just regained my memory, but I was afraid that we would be embarrassed, so I made a joke. I glared at him and asked, do you not have amnesia at all? You've been lying to me from beginning to end. He quickly shook his head. No, I swear, I really had amnesia before, and I only regained my memory today. Then why aren't you angry? Fabian Sandy replied as a matter of course. I got myself a girlfriend. Why should I be angry? Me, but I lied to you. This is the world of women. You are jealous, coquettish, cute, and have done so many shameful things. Shouldn't you be angry? Fabian Sandy raised her eyebrows and smiled. Even if it weren't for the female venerable world, I would have become like that if I chased you. After speaking, his eyebrows and eyes smiled, as if a little starlight overflowed from his eyes. But I'm a bit of a scumbag. I carefully put away the sweetness in my heart and opened my mouth with a cry of grievance. You didn't tell me when you recovered. Do you know how hard it was for me during this time? Your academic performance is so poor. Do you know how much hair I lost in order to tutor you? In the end, you took my makeup fee for yourself, and you changed your name to Bully. I cried louder and louder, and Fabian Sandy coaxed me vigorously, holding me and shaking me. Finally, he transferred money to me, 80,000. The extra is my compensation. Please forgive me, Ruby Olarander. His face was full of guilt and caution, as if he would give me whatever I wanted as long as I forgave him. But I was still sad, broke free from his embrace, and dropped the cruel words, don't try to corrupt me with money. I ran out of the hospital crying, walked down the street, took out my phone, collected money, blocked it, went back to my dorm room, and went to sleep. No matter what the previous plot goes, in the end, it must be the crematorium where he chases his wife. I've thought about countless famous scenes of chasing wives in crematoriums. For example, transfers, buy the bag, watch the fireworks, or it's going around me every day and then suddenly disappearing and worrying me. No matter how bad it is, it's acceptable to send me a small essay and move me. Whenever Fabian Sandy uses any of the above methods, I count him as careful. But this thing, directly downstairs in my dormitory, set up a heart-shaped candle. I still don't know where to find a band that plays sauna and slaps, with him kneeling in the candle and calling my name in a heart-rending voice. Let the onlookers think that I am dead. Even my roommates hugged me and shivered to see if I had a shadow. I was so angry that my brain hurt, and I couldn't say anything. In the end, it alarmed the school leaders. I was called in for a conversation and wrote a review on the grounds that I had mishandled my private life and affected the public order of the school. There is no hope for a scholarship this semester. I gritted my teeth and glared at Fabian Sandy beside me. How the memory comes back, but the brain is gone. Out of the director's office, I walked forward in a rage. No matter how Fabian Sandy called me behind me, he didn't pay any attention to it. Until you see the oncoming Quincy. As soon as he saw the two of us, he turned around and wanted to run, but I was quicker and grabbed the back of his fate, in his eyes begging to let him go. He smiled and took his arm. Then he frowned at Fabian Sandy, and deliberately raised his head. Quincy is my boyfriend. My words caused the person next to me to freeze, and then look down at me in disbelief. Quincy had surprise in her eyes, and a smile on her lips as she asked, you two broke up, then I have a chance. Fabian Sandy pursed her lips and looked at Quincy coldly, as if she was going to rush over and punch him the next moment. I looked at Quincy in amazement, not expecting him to like me. I was so happy to know that we had broken up. I turned my head to look at Fabian Sandy, and met his dark eyes. There was an emotion I couldn't understand, and he slowly spoke. Ruby Olarander, come here. The pleading in his tone was something I didn't have even when he had amnesia. Actually, I just want to be cheap, and I can't see him sad. I lifted my foot to go over, and Quincy grabbed my arm. Didn't you two break up? He bent down to look at me and said seriously, since we're breaking up, don't dwell on it. The next one is better. The next one is better. The next one is more obedient. Fabian Sandy walked over quickly, grabbed Quincy by the neckline, and yelled, Quincy, shut up. Not to be outdone, Quincy replied, she doesn't like you anymore. Why can't you let her go? Fabian Sandy, that's our business. It's none of your business. Quincy, why doesn't it matter? I'll have a chance if you break up. Fabian Sandy grabbed Quincy harder, and the back of her white hand was bruised, glaring at Quincy deadly. Quincy seemed to be shocked by the look in her eyes, and didn't dare to look at each other. I saw a scene like this between two men and one woman next to me, and my face kept shouting, don't fight. But the emotions in my heart have reached their peak. At this moment, I am the heroine of an idol drama. Quincy took several deep breaths, then glanced at me, as if she had mustered up courage, and met Fabian Sandy's eyes. I cried out inwardly, he's coming. He's going to show his love for me. He's going to compete with Fabian Sandy on a fair playing field. Quincy muttered quietly, Day. Then he shouted, Fabian Sandy, Ruby Ilarander doesn't want you. I want it. Fabian Sandy, me. Passerby. Unexpectedly, the clown turned out to be me. Obviously, I was the heroine of an idol drama just now. Now she has become a female partner of Socialist Brotherhood. Only outrageous. Fabian Sandy reacted first and pushed Quincy away, dragged me and ran, completely ignoring the true confession behind him. We didn't stop until we were out of the school gate. We looked at each other and looked away in embarrassment, speechless. It took a while for Fabian Sandy to speak. Now am I chasing you, or are you two robbing me? I thought for a moment. It depends on whether you like Quincy or not. He shook his head violently. Then let's reconcile and agree to the outside world. He nodded wildly. The direction of this plot really confuses me. Quincy, Bent, my wife's crematorium is also ruined. Only Fabian Sandy not only has one more suitor, but also escapes the long road of chasing his wife, in order to make Quincy die. The two of us even ran downstairs to his house, called him out, and hugged him in front of him. He bitten him for several streets. Later, I asked Fabian Sandy if he would have liked me if he hadn't had amnesia. He looked at me like a fool. Then why am I a school bully? It's not that you're too cowardly. You have to have someone who can protect you. But when we got to high school, we didn't talk much. He blushed and touched my head. Because I'm embarrassed. Because I'm afraid I can't hold it. The end.